Welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina, and today I'm going to be doing a one-off review of the book The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This book comes out on March 23rd this month, so 2021, and I received it as an art from NetGalley in exchange for a fair review. So The Unbroken is an ambitious adult fantasy that strives to broach important themes of colonization, racism, and privilege with an overarching story involving political intrigue, personal growth, and violent rebellion. The story follows two women. You've got Terrain, who was stolen from the city of Quazal. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I can't pronounce anything. When she was a toddler and raised to be a soldier to fight for the Baladarian army. And then you have Luca, heir to the throne of Baladare. So her people have colonized Quazal and some other provinces as well. Both of these women are in the city to maintain Valerian control after the city has been beset by rebels attempting to free it. So it's a political military fantasy. First of all, that cover, stunning. It's a stunning cover. This is what drew me to it. Usually I'm not a cover person. I'm more of like, a cool title person. But this cover is fantastic and pretty hot. Anyway, I definitely enjoyed the novel. And based on my rating system, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. But because it did suffer a little bit from mid-story lag, the romantic subplot felt a little half-baked, and some of the minor characters needed a bit more time on the page. I'm going to get more into that when I get to a spoiler section at the end, because I can't really explain it without getting into spoilers. But I'm going to talk about what I enjoyed about the book, because I want you to read it, because I think it's very, very good. The novel revels in its queerness, with more characters than not who are part of the LGBTQAI+ community, including the two main characters. The novel feels like an inverse of a lot of those fantasy novels where you have mainly men with a few women, as the cast in this book are predominantly women with a few men. I mean, gender parity is improving quite a lot today in terms of fantasy books, but you know what I mean about the traditional setup of fantasy. So there are two main characters, as I stated before. There's Terrain, who is a loyal soldier who was conscripted in the Baladarian army as a child, and Luca, heir to the throne of Baladare. So Luca is sent to Quazal as a test by her uncle, who is holding up the throne until Luca comes of age, basically, even though she is of age. The uncle doesn't think she's ready. Luca believes she is ready and is very frustrated by her uncle. Luca was interesting in that she's a royal who has to balance what she knows is morally right with her own ambitions. She tries to walk an impossible line. She knows what she should do, but also tries desperately to satisfy her own plans. As such, Luca's motivations I found were very understandable, and despite being the head of a brutal empire, I found her a likable character. She also has a physical disability, which is an important part of her character, but does not define her. That aspect was very well done. You don't often see that, especially in fantasy. Terrain's story was a little bland, though, in comparison, I found, as nothing she did really surprised me, but she's a complete badass, so I totally liked her. She's one of those people that can, take a beating and suffer through it with this impressive stoicism. The other characters are also impressed by her muscles pretty much all the time. So she kind of reminded me of Gideon the Ninth and She-Ra from the new She-Ra and the Princesses of Power show, which I absolutely adore. It's one of my favorite shows. Anyway, as such, both women have strengths and weaknesses that play off one another and complement one another. It's unfortunate that the romance angle wasn't as well developed as it could. They could have been this awesome power couple, but I just was I don't know. I'll talk about that later. I enjoy the fight scenes. They were gritty, at times brutal, and very well described. There were other moments of tension that kept me enthralled throughout. The political intrigue, though, is a little bit lacking. Luca really only has to deal with one general and an ill-intentioned lord, when she's trying to keep control of the city. Others of the ruling class only kind of existed on the periphery. But it's definitely not a court battle novel. This is not a novel, where people sitting around backstabbing one another. There's a little bit of that, but there's not a lot. So it didn't feel like it was missing anything. It just, sometimes I felt, I was like, where is the rest of the people in this court? The novel, though, as I said, does suffer a little bit in the center for pacing. I wasn't sure how much time had passed sometimes, and, there's some points when I was like, wait, where is this story going? Where are we going? But the last quarter of the novel is absolutely fantastic. There's some great fight scenes, some great interesting twists. There's a magical element that isn't like a deus ex machina. And, the comments the novel makes about racism and colonialism are poignant, but they're not didactic. You don't feel like she's preaching at you. Overall, I definitely enjoyed this novel, and I recommend it to anybody that likes adult fantasy. So if you've read the novel, continue on to my spoilers and let me know what you thought of the book. If you didn't like it, if you did like it. So yeah, here comes my spoilers. This is mainly critique. So as I said a couple times, the romance between Torraine and Luca is very disappointing. It moves way too fast at the start. There's no like delightful buildup of tension between people who shouldn't get together for political reasons. I mean, there's just a part where Torraine is like, oh, maybe Luca will like me more if I have sex with her. And Luca's like, you don't actually want to have sex with me. Why are you doing this? And I'm like, no, you've killed it. You've killed the sexual tension, essentially. You have chopped it in half. Anyway, but then it gets to this point in the novel where I wasn't even sure if the couple were even into one another anymore. And then at the end becomes this major focus. I was just like, the romance angle was all over the place. And I was like, I didn't expect it to be a romance novel, but I expected a romance subplot that was at least a bit more coherent. You know, if it had been a bit more one-sided, maybe just Luca had the hots for Torraine or vice versa or something, you know, or if there'd been more moments of sexual tension, you know, or if Torraine had given more than two shits about leaving Luca for the rebels, it would have worked a lot better for me. The kiss at the end was fantastic, but it just didn't fit. I didn't really feel their connection, I guess I could say. Other minor characters needed a lot more development. Perhaps some more flashbacks to Torraine and her time with her fellow Sans as they grow up would make me care more about them. I mean, Thibaut, Amy, I can't remember any other ones, Pruitt or whatever. Unfortunately, when Thibaut died, which should have been a big deal, I didn't really care because I didn't really know who he was. You know, I mean, I was like, when he died, I was like, he was the dude, right? Like, that's what I thought because I wasn't given enough, we didn't see enough of him for me to actually care that he got killed. Cantic, the general, her backstory was explained in passing from two characters. There, you know, a flashback or two more, or some more focus on the two perceptions of the event might have made the ending between Dejasha and Cantric a bit more fulfilling. I found it only mildly interesting, and it should have been like a big focus of the story. In fact, it could have been made more of a focus than Torraine and Luca even. It just seemed like an interesting kind of concept that I would wish had been fleshed out a lot more. One of those interesting yet confusing aspects of the story was the kind of plot between Chakotay, I hope I'm saying that right, Chakotay and Torraine. How a mother could kick her daughter hard enough to break her ribs, especially when she has to understand that the daughter has been brainwashed by these people that kidnapped her as a toddler. This was absolutely unbelievable to me as a mother. Absolutely unbelievable. I liked their growing relationship. I understood the antagonism. I understood the bickering, but I just don't understand how she could do that to her child. Like, I don't know. The mother-daughter relationship in Snowpiercer feels more realistic, and that show is ludicrous. I mean, I love Snowpiercer, don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite shows. But I just, the Torraine and Chakotay relationship, I just did not understand the anger. I mean, if it's a displaced anger on the mother's part, it wasn't portrayed well enough for me to understand how she could be so violent to her daughter. That didn't sit well with me, and I didn't, you know, if she had not understood that Torraine was her daughter at the time, that would have been, I guess, okay. But the novel goes out of its way to say that she knew that it was her daughter. So I was like, why? Anyway, there's a lot of positives about the book, though. I'm not just ranting up the bad stuff. There were some really cool details in the world. Like, for example, I really liked the grief rings that everyone wore. I mean, this is not a new thing. People wore them back in as far as the 1400s. They just kind of went back and forth in popularity. I think in the Victorian period they picked up again. They definitely picked up in the 1940s. I wonder what happened to cause that. World War II. So that was a really cool concept. I like those kind of small aspects of fantasy novels that they bring in. There were some really funny tongue-in-cheek moments that I really liked. There were some really nice passages, like the woman's gray blue eyes clouded over with a kind of rage that would sink ships. I thought that was cool. And then Torraine surveyed the palace that was not her home and yet held her heart in its fist. And the language had been culled from her. Speaking of that, I really enjoyed the way the colonialism was approached. It's not afraid to say, the book was not afraid to say that colonialism is shitty and it shouldn't be done. It's showing how this type of thing causes even more division in society and tears families apart. The rebels were correct. I mean, this novel definitely is not saying that there's two sides to the issue. It's saying, no, the rebels are correct. Luca should not have control of this city. And I really appreciated that it went that direction. As much as I liked Luca, much to my chagrin, the rebels were doing the right thing. So anyway, that's my review of The Unbroken. Thanks for watching.